This is, of course, a mixed emotions day for me. I did want to get a mandate to be the PC candidate for Highwood, but of course residents felt otherwise.
I would have liked to have seen the Premier ask his backroom, boardroom friends come to the table, roll up their sleeves, and be part of the solution.
We look ready? We're ready.
Welcome to Inside Politics. I'm Chris Varcoe, politics editor of the Calgary Herald, joined by columnist Don Braid. Don, I feel like we spent the last week trapped inside a fun house at an amusement park because every time we turned the corner, something different and unusual was happening in the world of Alberta politics.
That movie with the runaway bus, that's the way I think of it.
We started off last week with the Premier making a TV address on why he needed to deliver some tough medicine in the budget. Then we saw a very tough budget for taxpayers, one that had 59 different user fees and tax increases, as well as a record $5 billion deficit, and then followed up with some wild political maneuverings over the weekend that saw Danielle Smith lose the PC nomination. But let's start at the beginning with the budget, and that is, how well do you think this is going over with Albertans?
That budget is not playing well with people in general. There's a lot of tax increases there. I'm sure there's certain elements of it people like. I think they probably like the graduated income tax part. But almost everything else is going down badly. That's a big charge for healthcare premium. Some people are going to be paying a lot of money for that. And they didn't do the other side of it. They didn't do the cuts. Like Prentice always said, if we're going to raise taxes, we have to cut spending. Well, he didn't really cut spending by very much. I'm not sure that cutting spending would have been a good idea, but he kind of didn't keep his side of the bargain when he didn't really cut, That's the way a lot of people are seeing it. So I don't think it's going well, and they're thinking hard right now about what the next couple of weeks is going to bring, because they got to run an election on this thing, and not going well.
Don, one of the things that I've been amazed at since December is just the focus with that Premier Jim Prentice has had on the fact that oil prices are absolutely eviscerating their natural resource revenue, and tough medicine was going to have to happen. And he said it every single day for 3 months.
Oil prices continue to slip. All Albertans should be concerned when the price of oil slips below $80 per barrel. This is going to be a very difficult and a very challenging year.
But I'm not convinced yet that people have actually bought into that message.
People say time and again, if you watch social media and listen to what people are saying, they're saying, we've been through this before. We go through this and then we come back. Yes, we agree that maybe we've been spending too much. I think he's got that point across very well. But people, I don't think, are entirely convinced. A lot of people aren't entirely convinced that we need measures like this now. And worse for the government is I've heard many people say in the last few days, we think this is only the beginning. Give them a mandate and there's going to be more tax increases.
Okay, let's turn ourselves to last weekend's developments. And probably the biggest one was Danielle Smith, as I mentioned, losing the PC nomination in Highwood.
And our winning candidate is Carrie Fisher.
We saw all of the Wild Rose defectors previously win their nominations, then 3 of them, including Smith, lose over the weekend. What was the driving force here behind what can only be described as kind of, I think, a shocking result?
The budget had to have something to do with it. Those people abandoned their party's position to go and join Jim Prentice in his position. They were the people who were supposed to protect people against what happened in the budget, right? I think there's some kind of thing like that going on in the ridings. Smith's case is a little different. I'm not at all sure that the PCs were sorry to see her go, because she has all that incredible truckload of baggage from the floor crossings and the anger and all that. But the other 2 losses, Gary Bickman and Rod Fox, I don't think the PCs were anticipating that at all. And then they kind of proved it when they got another Wild Roser, Bruce McAllister, acclaimed. Very interesting.
Shocking results. Okay, so the last real sort of big thing that was going on in the last few days was the Wild Rose, who seemed like they were almost dead, 3 months ago, when almost the entirety of their caucus and their leader crossed the floor to join the Tories, have what, seemed to be a fairly vigorous meeting on Saturday to pick Brian Jean, the former Conservative MP out of Fort McMurray, as their leader. I guess I'm wondering, what is the potential there for Mr. Jean and for that party?
Well, I think there is some room for them. They've got a tremendous amount of work to do in the campaign, because nobody knows who Brian Jean is, really. He's a northern guy who was an MP for years. But if he comes across, if they can present him, if they got the money to get ads out there and everything, the Choma is reasonable and competent. And the very first thing he did was fire a candidate who said something about brown people moving to the front, please, so we have a better picture. It's a foolish thing to say. And the first thing Jane did was fire him. Now, when Danielle Smith was confronted with those problems in the last campaign, she didn't fire anybody. So he showed a kind of decisiveness about keeping this party sensible at the very beginning. And I think if they can get him out there, put out a sensible platform, as he says, keep the crazies out, there is some real serious political room for them.
It strikes me that Robin Campbell and the Tories made a political calculation when they put this budget together, and that was that without a real opponent on the right, they could probably, get through $2.5 or $3 billion worth of tax increases without really paying a political price. But it almost seems like the script has been written very neatly for Mr. Jean and the Wild Roses. Now, they're the anti-tax crusaders, and there's the government that wants to increase your tax.
Well, the government was right. They could have made sure there wasn't any serious opposition on the right if they'd also cut spending significantly. Not that I recommend it. I think economically it would have been a bad idea. Right. But had they done that, they could have covered off that territory, but now almost all Brian Jean talked about on the weekend was taxes and cuts, and the fact there weren't nearly as many as they want to see. So the PCs themselves have left that room.
Let's now turn our attention to the winners and losers of the past week. Don, who is your loser?
Oh well, it's got to be Danielle Smith. I mean, her political career is shattered. I mean, she's not Alison Redford. She's not scarred to that degree. I'm sure she'll be able to find a decent work and everything. But really, what a tremendous fall! What a spectacular lapse in judgment to take those people across the aisle. What a foolish misjudgment to imagine that people wouldn't see that as anything but a spectacular political betrayal. She has plenty of talents, a lot of passion for what she does. She's tremendous on the policy front, but ultimately, this strange political clique cost her a great deal.
All right. Well, my loser of the week is going to be the Alberta taxpayers, because there were so many different tax increases. We saw income tax increases. We saw a new healthcare levy being introduced. We saw fuel tax increases, cigarette taxes, liquor taxes. It seemed like every user fee that could go up possibly went up. So $1.5 billion in additional revenue is coming out of Alberta taxpayers' pockets this year. It's going to be over $2 billion next year. Yeah. That's why they're my loser of the week. My winner of the week, conversely, is going to be the NDP, particularly Rachel Notley. It strikes me that, the fact that the government wouldn't increase corporate taxes, but at the same time went to taxpayers for all of those increases that we just spoke about, and then didn't cut spending, it really seems like that is a tailor-made script. I know we've talked about this in the past, but if I'm the NDP in Edmonton, I'm probably feeling pretty good today.
Well, my winner would be, for many of the same reasons, would be tentatively, once again, very tentatively, Wild Rose. The corporate tax thing they've never been a particularly big a party of big business, and they come from that stream of Alberta politics where you can be on the right without favoring big business or corporations. So they can call some votes on that territory as well. And once again, it much depends on how well they do and how well they can get themselves out there. But tentatively, they could have won that week.
You look ready? Yeah. We're ready.
Okay, Don, I'm going to ask you one bonus question here, just because it's been such a spectacular week in politics. When do you think we might see an election call?
I'm thinking now, who knows, but they are so far along, I'm told they're so far along in preparations that it's really hard to stop. I mean, there must be a temptation to stop if the polling is bad, but it's really hard to do. Not that they couldn't. I think they're going to wait for what is a spring break in the legislature, essentially, at least for half of it, so we probably won't see the call until next week. Having said that, the phone might ring as soon as we get away from the mic.
Thanks, Don.